In the spring after this event, old Whately noticed the growing number of whippoorwills that would come out of Cold Spring Glen to chirp under his window at night. He seemed to regard the circumstance as one of great significance, and told the loungers at Osborne's that he thought his time had almost come. "They whistle just in tune with my breathing now," he said, "and I guess they're getting ready to catch my soul. They know it's a-going out, and don't calculate to miss it. You'll know, boys, after I'm gone, whether they get me or not. If they do, they'll keep up a singing and laughing till break of day. If they don't, they'll kinder quiet down like. I expect them and the souls they hunt for have pretty tough tussles sometimes." On Lammas night, 1924, Dr. Houghton of Aylesbury was hastily summoned by Wilbur Whately, who had lashed his one remaining horse through the darkness and telephoned from Osborne's in the village. He found old Whately in a very grave state, with a cardiac action and stertorous breathing that told of an end not far off. The shapeless albino daughter and oddly bearded grandson stood by the bedside, whilst from the vacant abyss overhead there came a disquieting suggestion of rhythmical surging or lapping, as of the waves on some level beach. The doctor, though, was chiefly disturbed by the chattering night birds outside, a seemingly limitless legion of whippoorwills that cried their endless message in repetitions timed diabolically to the wheezing gasps of the dying man. It was uncanny and unnatural, too much, thought Dr. Houghton, like the whole of the region he had entered so reluctantly in response to the urgent call. Toward 1 o'clock, old Whately gained consciousness and interrupted his wheezing to choke out a few words to his grandson. "More space, Willie, more space soon. You grows, and that grows faster. It'll be ready to serve you soon, boy. Open up the gates to Yog Sothoth with the long chant that you'll find on page 751 of the complete edition, and then put a match to the prison. Fire from earth can't burn it nohow." He was obviously quite mad. After a pause, during which the flock of whippoorwills outside adjusted their cries to the altered tempo, while some indications of the strange hill noises came from afar off, he added another sentence or two. "Feed it regular, Willie, and mind the quantity, but don't let it grow too fast for the place, for if it busts quarters or gets out afore he opens to Yog Sothoth, it's all over and no use. Only them from beyond kin make it multiply and work. Only them, the old uns, as wants to come back." But speech gave place to gasps again, and Lavinia screamed at the way the whippoorwills followed the change. It was the same for more than an hour. When the final throaty rattle came, Dr. Houghton drew shrunken lids over the glazing gray eyes as the tumult of birds faded imperceptibly to silence. Lavinia sobbed, but Wilbur only chuckled whilst the hill noises rumbled faintly. "They didn't get him," he muttered in his heavy bass voice. Hello, 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 as the people of Brood Hollow say. Welcome back to Lovecraft Sundays in the middle of the CarnyPop DailyDrop. So, today we're talking about the Dunwich Horror, another one of the novellas that Lovecraft has written. This one is a little more typical than I'd say the last two were, but in a lot of that ways it's very, very good. So, basic story of this one is that a woman, Hicktown. First of all, a lot of Hicktowns in Lovecraft. Need to understand that. There are he talks about degeneracy a lot, and decadence as the original meaning means. This kind of slope downward. And he thought that people who were full-on Hicks out in the middle of nowhere could degenerate really fast, honestly. So that's where we are. We're in a hick New England town that no civilized folk go to. And most of the people out here think that they're weird. But there's, amongst those weirdos, there is a family which is even weirder. And they have rumors to have dealt with crazy things, dark magics, alchemy, etc., etc. So, the old man is the one, the grandfather in this situation, is the one who is the warlock. He's the one who does all of the creepy shit. He's the one that just died in the passage that I read. It's been set up before about the whippoorwills. He just repeats it so that you know that this is the significance of it. And something in a section not too far off from where I stopped is that all those whippoorwills get up and fly to try and chase his soul. So that's a really cool thing. I love that aspect of it. I don't know where Lovecraft got that these birds, these night birds, start chirping in time with people who are about to die's last breaths and then grab their soul. But it's a super cool folklore thing, you know? Like, I wonder if it's from something or if he made it up. But the basic structure of this, the old man is the warlock, as I said. His daughter, on one of the black masses, gets pregnant by something, and nobody knows who the father is. Strange. And then she gives birth to a son, and the son is a lot darker, and that's where get out your Lovecraft bingo cards and check off racism, because we've got the racism today. The very evil character of the grandson is described as being dark in color. Now, yes, it could just be a choice to make him dark-skinned, but it carries with it a lot of weight, you know what I mean? And he didn't need to be dark-skinned and evil, but he is. So, be ready for that. But moving onward, this character no one knows who the father is. The grandson grows up very quickly. And he's kept away from other people by the grandfather. And him and the grandson start expanding their house, eventually building a whole new barn. And all of this is in service to some greater purpose. This story has two main phases. The setup, and then once our active characters come in to try and start solving the problem. And it all hinges on the death of the grandson. So the whole first part of the story is leading up and building up this character and building up the relationship between him and his grandfather, and how nefarious it is, and how much they're dealing with secrets that they shouldn't be dealing with, and how everyone is creeped the fuck out, and every decent person that interacts with this family is just like, I gotta get out of here. I don't like a thing that's going on. I need to leave. But eventually, Wilbur, the grandson, which what a funny name to give someone who's supposed to be threatening like that. Wilbur eventually goes to find a copy of the Necronomicon. In the passage that I read, that's what his grandfather's talking about. So he's trying to find a copy of the Necronomicon, and during that process, he ends up dying. And I forget the specifics. I think it's that he's like, I don't know, he's supposed to rest, or maybe he gets in an altercation with someone and gets hurt, or I forget exactly how it happens. But when he dies, they get to see his body. And he looks partly goat-like, and his bottom part of his body is also like bulbous fleshy with tentacles. And he's only been able to keep that secret by very specifically tailored clothes. Also, by this point, he's like 7.5 feet tall, and he's 10 years old. He ages ludicrously fast. He just keeps growing, and he's unsettling to everybody around him. And he just keeps getting worse. So at one point, he dies. And then the people that see his body, one of them, someone who studies occult stuff a little bit, is like, oh no, I need to go figure out what's going on in Dunwich. Because clearly something is going on with Dunwich. We can't be lucky enough to think that he's just dead. They keep the secret from the rest of the public and the police. They don't release it out to everyone. There was this freaky part human, part something else hybrid. But eventually when they go out to Dunwich, there starts to be an invisible terror. It's literally something that you can't see. until they get something that reveals it. This is one where people can actually fight back against the things, and that's large in part because they are part human. And I did say they, because there are two of them. Though there could be a singular they, but no one is using non-binary. No one identifies as non-binary in Lovecraft's works. But the actual Dunwich horror, which bursts out of the barn that was built and starts destroying everything, just cutting a path through it. It ends up in a cavern, is eventually dispatched by a group of these people from another town, like the people from civilization, functionally, who show up to take care of this. And they have a spell, basically, that they've pulled from the Necronomicon, where they're like, okay, they should be able to banish it, hopefully, and they have the materials for it. And then the story goes into this weird device where they go up to go fight it, and now our perspective is from the townsfolk looking through a telescope at the encounter, so we're not... Lovecraft really likes to keep a degree of separation. So as soon as we were really going to, be there at the fight, he needs to, pull the camera back a little bit. It lets him show off how good he is at writing dialect, because Lovecraft's language choice is very stuffy, and at first it seems like that's the only way he can write. But then you notice that it's a deliberate style when you read other stuff, because when he writes dialogue, he writes in the dialect of the people, and he's very fluid, and people generally talk close to how people would talk. It's just that the academic style that he generally goes for is his choice. It's what he likes to do. The thing about the Dunwich horror, the creature, the horror in this, is that Wilbur had a twin. Two monsters were birthed that day. One of them looked more like their mother. That was Wilbur. Human, more or less, to the untrained eye, and with a bit of special clothing. The Dunwich horror, however, the other monster, looked a lot more like the father. And it had been kept secret all those years and slowly fed and brought outward. Because at a specific time, when it was ready, they could open up the portal to Yog-Sothoth, and the fact that this creature was mostly Old One, mostly Elder God, mostly Thing from Beyond the Veil, and much less human, means that it would have been able to be used to bring the Old Ones back over here. And it would have been able to multiply infinitely. And supposedly, these two warlocks, Wilbur and his grandfather, would have been able to control it, as well as bring the old gods back into this world. So this had huge ramifications. If this one goes off, the world's fucked. So overall, I think that this novella is totally worth reading. Definitely gets a recommendation for me. There's a lot of cool stuff. The way that the reveal of both monsters is handled, I think, is especially good. With Wilbur, you know something's up with him, but then they finally get to see his body, and you realize, oh man, he's a demon child in flesh. You know what I mean? He is a creature from beyond the veil, through and through, not just a weird wizard warlock baby. And the horror itself, the way the action of it being dispatched is taken care of, is honestly pretty interesting. I know I just complained a little bit about the telescope, but it's an interesting device to keep us with the uneducated townspeople, even if it's a little bit much to pull our focus back and not give us that information. But with this story overall, the Dunwich horror is a good one. And it's also another novella which isn't too long. It didn't seem too laborious to read, and you get a lot of bang for your buck. So I would say definitely check this one out. I think it's worthwhile. Trying to think if there's anything else that I have to say about it. I think it is a cool example of a magic-using character in Lovecraft's universe who is an old keeper of secrets and is intelligent, but is not associated with academia. Because there are several people who are associated with academia, both people who are good and bad in Lovecraft stories. But this is a character who has great knowledge, but lives out here in the sticks and kind of practices his own magic, but isn't dumb. Because there's a lot of people who do practice dark arts in Lovecraft's stories who don't completely understand what they're doing. And I would say that this character, I think one of the reasons that the grandfather had to die in this story is that Lovecraft realized he had written someone who was actually good enough to potentially control the thing he was trying to release, even a little bit. And that's not really his style. So they need to get out of the way so that the hapless people can try and deal with the terror of it. I also think that a lot of the scenes with the members of the town just reacting to the Dunwich horror and trying to figure out what's going on when there's just houses that have been destroyed and footprints in the ground but no visual representation because you can't see the thing until a spell reveals it. I think that was also really well done. And I think that the invisible killer is a really good horror trope. You know, taking it out of the realm of a ghost and into the seeing the footfalls. I mean, relatively recent at the time of this recording, not necessarily when this goes up, but when in the Death Stranding trailer, it's the same type of horror of seeing the footprints approach you without seeing the creature that makes them. It's very Lovecraftian because it is about implication. It is about the horror of implication. Because if you see a small bit of something, you can surmise the rest of it, and sometimes that is scarier than seeing it in totality. That's why the Godzilla trope is that, you know, they find the footprint, right? It's because once you see a footprint of a giant thing, you don't assume it to be something with giant feet and a little bitty body. You assume it to be a giant, correctly proportioned creature. And there's that feeling in the invisible Dunwich horror. So, those are my thoughts on the Dunwich horror. Somebody just went by on their motorcycle right at the end of this vlog. That's it. I think you should read this one, overall. I don't think it is at the top of the list, but I think it is absolutely worth reading. And that's it. So, this is CarnyPop, signing off. Bye!